All right, welcome to the 7th homework set here. Now, again, the first thing we're going to tackle in this one is dealing with depreciation. So again, this is going to be on March 25th of 2019. That's important because remember, you'll have to do prorating of depreciation if we're talking about either doing straight line or double accounting balance method, which is what you're going to see in a moment. So you got to pay attention to that. We're going to do that first year of depreciation. So they're going to purchase equipment with a cost of $10 million. Okay, I'll correct that immediately. Try again. 10 million, there we go. Useful life is 5 years, salvage value is $1 million. So we're going to, and again, fiscal year is a calendar year. So in other words, just January 1 through December 31st. So first I want to know depreciation expense for 2019 by straight line. Okay, so what's important here is the first thing you got to do is figure out what annual straight line depreciation is. In other words, 12 months of depreciation. Remember, under straight line, it's going to be defined as cost minus salvage value. In this case, we'll just divide it by the 5 years. This gets you what the annual straight line rate would be. That is going to be $1.8 million per year. Because our depreciation base here, also depreciable cost, remember those are synonymous for straight line, is $9 million. So once a year for the next 5 years, we can take $1.8 million. But remember, our first year was 2019, and again, half-month convention is going to tell us how much of that year we can actually depreciate it for. So it clearly didn't own this asset at all in January, February, and so the question is, did they really own it at all in March? And the answer is going to be no, because look at when they purchased it in March 25th, right? So that's on the wrong side of our 15-day cutoff. So we're going to say no, they didn't own it and operate it in March at all. So in other words, we're going to say it basically started in April 1st. In other words, 9/12 is all we can take of 2019 when we're figuring depreciation on this. So that's why you should only have $1,350,000 as your answer for 2019. Again, we're using just a half-month convention here. So that takes care of A. Now B, I'll tick that off just to be somewhat consistent with what I've tried to do in the other videos. I don't always stick to it though, as you probably noticed. Now what if we talk about 2020? Well, this is easy. In other words, 2020 is going to be what we already calculated. In other words, the annual straight line depreciation of $1.8 million. And remember, this is going to be the true amount of depreciation on this asset for the next several years. So for 2020, 21, 22, and 2023. Now, again, I didn't ask you to do this necessarily in the homework, but there would be an additional 3 months of depreciation applicable into 2024, which in this case, the prorating would be 1.8 million times what? Times 3/12. That would sort of like be the missing piece of the schedule. So 1/4 of that will give you exactly, that should be an additional $450K of depreciation. If you're looking at the schedule, you'd probably see that there was $450,000 outstanding. In other words, the book value would be probably $1,450,000. So you take 3 extra months and then of depreciation, and then it gets down to what? Exactly $1 million. Kind of getting ahead of myself here with that, but that's okay. We'll tackle that idea that I'm talking about in a moment. Right now for C, I'm going to ask you to switch to double declining balance method. Now keep in mind for this one, the double declining balance method, things change, right? A lot of things change. Like first of all, what is your basis of depreciation here? Remember, your basis of depreciation for straight line is always going to be cost less salvage value. But for double declining balance method, it's what? It's book value. Right? So you always have to ask yourself, what's the book value of this at the beginning of the depreciation schedule? And that book value is always going to be equal to what? Cost, because you haven't depreciated it all. So that's number one. Secondly, again, what's the double part? Remember, the double here is telling us we're going to double the straight line rate. So the straight line rate is going to be 100% divided by 5. So you get 20%, double it, and then you get 40%. So the first year we can take $4 million of depreciation. But again, that's still defined by what? A full calendar year, at least 12 months. So we're still in the same position we were with straight line, meaning we have to prorate that because we really didn't own and operate it the first 3 months of the year. So we can take 9/12 of that, 3/4. So first year's depreciation is going to be $3 million. So again, this is just the notation that we're still doing half-month convention here. All right, now D, I threw a little loop at you here, said what's depreciation for 2021? Now the key thing here is you got to figure out first, before you can get to this year, you got to figure out what 2020 was. So that's why I included it in the calculation, because remember, it's going to be dependent upon, 2021 is going to be dependent upon what happened in 2020. So because of the continuation of the calculation, that's why this is a stepping stone. Right, so it's going to be 10 million minus 3. Why minus 3 million? Because this represents the book value of your equipment through the end of the previous year, 2020, or excuse me, 2019. I'll get my years right here. 2019, right? So it was worth $7 million at the end of the year. That's the book value. So you just take 40% of that ending book value, and you'll get 2.8 million as your depreciation for 2020. Now you'll see what I did is I factored it into this one here. In other words, now your updated book value is going to be the 7 million minus 2.8 million. So now your basis here should be, I'll just put it up here, shorthand, 4.2 million. So you'll take 40% of 4.2 million, and you should get 1,680,000 as your depreciation according to double declining balance method for 2021. I'm just cleaning that up a little bit there. All right, so E is asking what's the book value of the equipment at the end of March 2024, which would be the end of the 5th year of service if we use straight line. Of course, again, the way straight line works, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. In other words, book value at the end of its last year of useful life will always equal salvage value. So because why? We set that $1 million aside, so it'll just equal $1 million. You don't even have to do the calculations. You just know that's going to happen. And I alluded to it earlier as well. Now F, what's the book value of the equipment same date if we do double declining balance method? And remember, we've already taken care of depreciation through 2021. So I'm going to have you do the calculations, but I'll just cut to the punchline and say, guess what? It's also going to be $1 million, but it's going to occur a little differently though. It's not going to be the same as the straight line method. Again, that's very straightforward, right? You know exactly where it's going to end when it's straight line. In this case, you don't have that. So you got to step through the calculations for 2022. Right? So once again, everything in this bracket here represents book value at the end of 2021. So what you'll get in this case is you'll get 2,520,000. In other words, after you subtract, trust me, that's a 5. After you subtract this additional piece here, you get 2,520,000. 40% of that will give you an additional $1,008,000 of depreciation through 2022. So once again, we're going to factor that into 2023. So it'll be our 2,520,000 minus additional 1,008,000. So you'll get $1,512,000 as its book value at the end of 2022. So we take 40% of that, and this is what the calculation is at $604,800. But what's the problem with that? If I applied that, subtracted that much from this number here, we'd have a number less than $1 million, which is salvage value. So in other words, when you come up against a situation like this where you'll actually push it below salvage, what's the adjustment? The adjustment in that case is that you're going to have to just say, well, we're maxed out at what? Well, we can only take another what? Here's the book value minus the salvage value of $1 million. We're maxed out at $512,000. So we can only take $512,000 of depreciation in 2023, and then we're done. So the schedule ends and we have a book value of exactly $1 million. In other words, you can't continue the depreciation into 2024 for those last 3 months of service because why? Because you've already hit the floor. You've hit the floor, in this case, defined as salvage value. And the last piece of the depreciation material is in part 2 here. In this case, new example, fresh example. So we have Barton Industries acquires a new moving van for $445,000. Again, fun with numbers. All right, and plans to depreciate it by units of production. The estimate useful life of 80,000 miles with a salvage value of 10,000. So the first thing you got to figure out is what is the rate of depreciation per mile. So that's the first thing up. Now remember, the depreciation base under this method is the same as straight line. It's what did you pay for it minus what are you setting aside that you say you're never going to depreciate, which in this case is $10,000 divided by 80,000 miles. So you'll get 0.4375 cents per mile. So 43 cents and 3/4 of another penny every mile. All right, so what if you drive the van 12,500 miles in 2019? What's going to be your depreciation expense for that year? So it's going to be that rate per mile, or 43.75 times 12,500 miles, and we'll get, again, this I'm taking out to pennies. You don't have to do this. You could just probably round it up to $69 would be fine. $5,469 would be acceptable as well if you don't want to be this exacting. All right, I'm going to conclude this video here. So this will just be part 1. So it'll be like a 10-minute installment instead of something longer, and we will pick up So you'll see this slide again. We'll pick up with part 3 on the next slide. So I'll see you there.